Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Hannah. How's it going? I'm saying hi to you, even though we were hanging out in the green room.
Mhm, mhm.
Let's see who's here. I'm publishing a poll, so for folks joining, let us know how you identify in your working world. I'm super curious, and I also love to do. Let's do like check-in question. Let's do. Let's see. We'll call it. This is called a sticky message. Makes it stick to the top of the chat. Um, Check-in question. Um, You know what? Let's do what's inspiring you lately. I'm gonna put you on the spot here in a second, Hannah, and ask you what's inspiring you lately. And by the way, y'all, this doesn't have to be like sometimes people, that's kind of an intimidating question, and people are like, oh, what's inspiring? That feels like a big question. It could be something tiny. It could be, I don't know, a walk you took or something. And cool. Yay. I'm an independent school counselor. Yes, you know what? Yes, of course. Catholic school college counselor. Thank you. CBO stands for a community-based organization, Kirk. Yeah, why didn't I put? I don't know why I didn't put independent school um, on there. I think I made that mistake once before, so I apologize. So Hannah, so for anybody who's interested, I'd love to just have you share in the chat, like what's inspiring you lately. Hannah, what's inspiring you lately? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Well, something that's been on my mind a lot is I've been listening to different podcasts and I don't know, I've been really delving into the world of Dr. David Sinclair. He talks about basically the studies of like how to, prolong your life and like just the things you could do in your life to basically, fight aging. I know it sounds kind of like superficial, but it's really just to live a healthier, more abundant lifestyle. And like, it's just so inspiring to see that there's such smart people out there who like really want to do this to help people. And so,
Hmm, I
yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Um, what's inspiring me lately? Here's a quote, and I know this is like, oh, Ethan, you came with the quote, but there was a quote from Obama that I read yesterday that says, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek."
Mm.
I'm going to put that in the chat box. And so as we're checking in here, I know we're getting ready to start. I don't like long intros. We're going to be starting very, very soon. But what's inspiring you? Atomic Habits by James Clear. I've been reading that too, Momina. Um, More podcasts. Bring us the podcast. Which ones? Sunshine, my daughter. Lovely. I know it's kind of a hard question. The easier question that I usually ask is something like, what are you celebrating? Or like, what's great about your life right now? But let's jump in without further ado. Happy Black History Month, first of all. Another quote that inspired me was one from Colin Powell. He says, "Have a vision, be demanding." I love, 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 love that quote. And I'm curious, and we don't have time to talk about this today, but I'm excited and inspired by folks' visions and what folks see in terms of what they want to create in their year. One of the things that we've been talking about internally as a company is issues of equity and access and what that means for us. If you're interested in thinking more about equity and access and making it a bigger part of the work that you do, there's a great organization called the Institute for Anti-Racist Education. I'm going to put a link. I'm going to put lots of links, and don't worry, we're going to follow up with all these in the chat. But they've got a lot of great resources. One of my favorite resources they have is a Black History Month resource guide for educators and counselors. And I'm going to post that in the chat as well. And there's just so much that great work that they're doing. They've got a white anti-racist accountability group for those who are interested. It's a 2-week mini course. It's one that I took last year. Awesome. Found it really inspiring. A resource that we shared last year, which if folks are interested in, you can just check it out. I know you're going to be like, Ethan, you're just pelting us with links, but it's 40 ways that counselors can help basically bring more equity to the college admission process. And so I'm sharing that in the chat as well. You'll find a link to the White Anti-Racist Accountability mini course inside that, and just a bunch of other, great ideas. Part of it was inspired by a podcast with Marie Bigham, done I think 2 years ago now. And you'll find also a list if you're interested in, volunteering with organizations, for example, that are doing great work. Other CBOs, you'll find a list that we created of 100 plus community-based organizations and nonprofits that are accepting volunteers. So if that's on your radar in your plan this year, hopefully those resources will help. We're going to do some quick announcements, and then we're going to get into the content. One announcement we have this one-day mini course coming up this Saturday and next Saturday. And the first Saturday one is, I'm going to share my screen for this one. It's a mini course for counselors on the financial aid process. So here, let me just share this real quick so you can kind of see what is the what. It's a one-day mini course. The first one, like I mentioned, is for counselors. It's with Amanda Miller. She is amazing, knows a ton about financial aid. And it's going to be kind of an advanced course for counselors in that it's some of the things that Amanda's going to be talking about are not just the basics of, what is the FAFSA, but how do you talk to students about financial aid and about, getting money for college. It's pay what you can, as all of our courses are. So, if you're interested in PD and you're interested in learning more about financial aid, I highly recommend, checking it out. And then we've also got a version of it for students and parents that happens the following week. So more at the link that I shared. What else? Ooh, our Matchlighters program is coming up really. Sorry, this is like a lot of commercials usually. Usually we don't do this many, but this is like a lot of things I wanted to share with y'all because it's kind of like our first big webinar of the year. So our Matchlighters application is opening 1 month from today. The Matchlighters program is our program that pairs students with caring counselors like yourselves, and for essay help, and if they need it, some list development help. And that's been going now for like 6 years. Have had amazing results, amazing students. The reason I'm mentioning it to you counselors is we're looking for more counselor partners to send us more students this year. So what I mean by this is we basically get a bunch of counselors, 500, 700 counselors, and then we get 500 to 700 students to basically pair with those counselors. And this last year, we ran into the unique problem of having more counselors than students. So if you are a counselor who's like, ooh, I've got some, low-income students who would be interested in some one-on-one essay help, then let's talk. So I'm putting a Google form in there, and it's essentially a very simple form that you fill out. And we are looking for partners at public schools, charter schools, community-based organizations to send us more students. So if that's interesting, please, fill out that form and we'll be back in touch. We've got a whole committee now that's basically, in charge of recruiting more students for this program. So the commercial's over. Hannah, I would love it if you would just briefly introduce yourself. I could do it, but I think it's better coming from you. And then we'll get right into the content. So everyone, meet Hannah Moon, my director of workshops now. Go.
It's so funny because he still calls me Hannah Moon because he's known me from before.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Hannah got married since we met each other 15 years ago.
But it's fine. It's okay. We've known each other so long, so I actually miss that name a lot. But yeah, so my name is Hannah Lim, and thank you so much for having me here, Ethan. So just a quick background on myself. I'm the oldest of 2 working class parents who actually went to some college or did go to college, but I was still so lost with the college process. So by the time I went to college or was going to choose the college, I went with the one that was just the prettiest. And so, and I basically got my teaching credential there, and my goal was to, teach at my old high school. But I decided, I don't want to go into the tenure track yet and all this stuff. So I actually moved to Bangkok to teach there. And that's where I ended up doing a lot of just kind of getting into the college admissions process because I worked with international students there. But when I got back to the States, that's when the recession happened. They were not hiring teachers. So I ended up working for the same company that I was working for out there here. And that's where I met Ethan. And so I was there for a while. And 6 years later, I finally got my dream position at my old high school teaching 11th grade, 11th graders English, and then 12th graders in the AVID program. So I ended up being the EL coordinator and the AVID coordinator there. And my favorite part really was helping my FGLI AVID students write their college essays and even see some of them become the first to graduate high school and then go to college. And so my experience from my previous job actually helped me tremendously in this capacity. And so, but while I was teaching, I was still with Ethan as the essay coach and workshop facilitator. And so after 8 years teaching and teaching through the pandemic, I actually made the transition to come on full-time with CEG. And my goal ultimately is to help students get the help that I never got. even with parents who had some college experience. And I never want to forget that the workshops that we present may be the only chance that some students will get to get help on their essays. So that's me.
Thank you. Yay. I'm so glad to have you. So Hannah is going to get, so I'm in terms of the agenda, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about 3 really practical resources, or really sets of resources that you can use when it comes to doing a kickoff with your students this year, in particular with your juniors, when they're thinking about their essay process. The first one is going to be about great brainstorming exercises. I'll walk you through those. Next, we're going to talk about this thing called topic check, which is like, how do you make sure before the student spends like 10 hours working on an essay topic that really is going to kind of maybe hit a dead end or maybe be kind of common, how do you head them off at the pass? And Hannah's going to share a way that, how we do that. And there are 2 different resources that we use for that. And then we're going to get in a little bit into feedback. And I know this is kind of early, but I wanted to just kind of seed this for you. I'm going to share my quick guide to giving great essay feedback, because I think that sometimes it can be really hard to give great essay feedback in like 5 minutes. And so I'm going to share with you something really specific, a set of principles and a resource that you can use to help students get great feedback in just like 5 minutes. Then, believe it or not, we're going to get into a little bit on different formats that you can use for your essay kickoff workshop or your essay process that you use with students. And I'm going to share 4 different models for that. And Hannah's going to talk about what it's like to set up a peer review system. So all this and more, and then we're going to take your questions at the end. We're going to jam in the next 40 minutes, basically. So the first question, kind of to just center us in this whole work is, and I'm gonna share, some of you, if you've seen my work before, or you've seen our work, is you've seen this values exercise. And the values exercise is just an awesome one to start with, I think, for helping students center in like, well, why are you applying to college? What is this whole process about? But it's also a really great one for counselors. So I want to just start with the question of why. Like, why is it, let's say this year, like, what are your motivating values for what you hope students to get out of this process? So take a look at this screen for a second that I'm sharing, and I'll put this in the chat as well. This is like our values exercise, sometimes called the values menu. But what is this? What is it that you're hoping to get? And let's actually maybe just pick 3 top values for you and put in the chat box that you're hoping to bring even more into your students' lives and to your own work and maybe your own life. And it's going to be different for everybody. But go ahead and share that in the chat. There's also like a tiny delay, so I'll share the thing and then there's like a little delay before folks actually respond. So just to re-ask it, what are top 3 values for you? And they don't have to be like the number 1 through 3, but like top values for you as you think about your work with students through the college admission application and essay process. Because this is going to shape a lot of the work that you do with students. For me, for example, I'll go first. I think creativity is a big one. I think efficiency is another big one. And I think purpose is probably a big one. I mean, the big ones that I usually go to are like ease, purpose, and joy. As folks are filling this in, Hannah, what are a couple of big values for you in this work?
Yeah, for me, definitely is meaningful work, excellence, and I want to stray away from empathy, but I'm like drawn to that. Yeah.
Yeah. What's cool about this exercise, and thanks y'all for sharing your thoughts here. We obviously can't read them all aloud, but I appreciate this. I think that what's useful about this exercise is that it's a good sort of like snapshot of where you're at or where I'm at each year, because this shifts a little bit for me from year to year. And it shifts at even the start of a workshop. So I might start a workshop and as I'm planning it, go like, you know, today, for example, I really want to bring the creativity, or maybe I'm going to go like certainty. Maybe it's day 2 of the workshop or day 3, and students really want to know that they have something as they leave a workshop. So I might shift my focus. And this kind of gives me a nice compass for this. So I wanted to just start with that. And also to just see that as even though we're going to be showing more than 3 resources, that's kind of the first resource of helping students just center where they are in this process. So the first official resource that I want to share with you is some great brainstorming exercises. And let me just give you context for how I came up with these exercises. So if you've been on the website before, you've probably seen like the essence objects exercise and maybe this values exercise. And those are pretty good for getting students to come up with ideas. But some of you have heard this, some of you haven't. Last year, actually 2 years ago, I developed this thing called the Choose Your Own Adventure essay tool. And the way I developed it was, actually, let me stop sharing my screen so you can see my face for a second. The way I developed it is I looked at 300 past essays that I felt were successful and asked myself, okay, how are students getting to their different topics? What were they using to, like, what exercise were they using? Or what did they end up choosing for their topics? And I ended up creating this big old spreadsheet of different types of essays. And I reverse engineered that to create some new exercises. And I put those inside this thing called the Choose Your Own Adventure tool. And inside this, and again, we'll follow up with links to all of this, we have this tool that we use with students to help them generate. And I use this when I lead my online courses, when I meet with students, if I meet with students one-on-one, I will use these actual exercises and have them create their pre-work. And so I want to walk you through these briefly. And again, don't worry, we'll follow up with links with what I feel like are, in my mind, if I was going to spend 25 minutes with a student helping them to generate ideas, these are the most effective ones that I've ever found. The first one is a values exercise, which again kind of helps situate us in what is this whole process. And then these 7 short brainstorming exercises are my favorite ones. So the first one is called I love or I know, which maybe you've heard me talk about this one before, but it's basically spending a minute making a random list of things that you love. For example, I love games, I love road trips, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then what's a list of things that you know a lot about? So I know a lot about snacks and free throws and facilitation. You'd be surprised at how many students in there, maybe you wouldn't be surprised because you're a counselor, just end up finding a topic just based on this, something they love or know a lot about, something they can geek out on. And asking this as an initial one can kind of get the juices flowing a little bit. Also, sometimes the I love, I know stuff ends up overlapping with stuff that they do in the other exercises. The next one is this essence objects exercise, which I won't do right now, but again, we'll follow up with links. But it's coming up with a list of specific concrete objects that represent relationships in your life, meaningful moments, things you're proud of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, what's an object, for example, that reminds you of home, whatever it means to you, or an object that makes you feel safe? Again, this is one of those, and I've seen students just write a whole essay about an object or a set of objects or the stuff in their room. Also a great one to unlock things. The third one is this list of random questions, which these questions I found to be pretty good to elicit ideas. But the first one in particular, what is or what are your actual superpowers, sometimes leads to a topic. Like one student, for example, listed beatboxing as his superpower, and that turned in, he wrote the beatboxing essay. What's your favorite story to tell, or what traditions have been passed down in your family? So here's a list of questions that we found to be pretty useful for getting students to come up with ideas. I know I'm going through these fast. It's because we got a lot to cover. But again, links. The fourth one is career one. You'll be familiar with this one. I want to be an entrepreneur, and here are all the values that have led me to either realize I want to be an entrepreneur, or that I've developed in my life that I think are going to be useful in my future as an entrepreneur, even if that student hasn't done entrepreneurial things, quote unquote, although they probably have. So this is a fourth one. Oftentimes you'll see the career essay. I'm not going to get into today, that'll be a future PD, on how to help students stand out with these essays. Right now, it's just about the generating of ideas. But the simple way to ask this is like, have the student write down what the career is and then the values that they feel like would help them, that they would help serve them in that career. The fifth one is an identities exercise. This has become my favorite one. We've got a great example essay on this one. What are the different ways that you identify? If this was a 3-hour workshop, I would have you counselors name what are some of the ways that you identify, and you would just list them all. I'm a reader, jazz lover, queer, Colombian, singer, feminist, etc. You thought I was talking about me, and then I started sharing some of the others. Like, wait, this doesn't sound like you. So different identities, different ways. We did this as a group, our team, Hannah and I, and a few others on our team, and it was beautiful to just learn about each other a little bit more. So this is an awesome, cool PD exercise. If you've got an in-house thing that you're doing with your English teachers, just ask what are some different, make a list of all the different ways you identify, pick one of the identities, and in a circle, just share for 2 minutes or 1 minute on what's an identity that you feel like a lot of people don't know about you. If you really knew me, you would know I identify as this, and just have folks share. It's a great one. And students, it creates a great essay topic, either one identity, or sometimes students will choose multiple identities to write on. Home, this is connected to an old, now retired Common App prompt, but where's the place where you feel most like yourself, where you find flow? In the kitchen, or when I'm coding, or when I'm playing games with my brothers. It could be that the student ends up writing about one home or multiple homes. And then the last one, this is one that Hannah inspired the name for it. We were talking about Inside Out because we're both Disney geeks, Disney Pixar geeks, I should say. Mm-hmm. And this simple exercise inspired by the movie Inside Out is like, what are the different islands of your personality? And so basically in this film, this Pixar film, the main character has these different islands of personality, Hockey Island, Friendship Island. And these are the sort of the different spheres have made her, who she is. And essentially just sharing that there's like a little 1-minute clip that you can click on and sharing with students that video clip, and then asking them, what are the different islands of your personality? At the ends of all these exercises, helps them to sort of synthesize and go, okay, here's the different sides of me that I want to make sure manifest in the application somewhere. Maybe in the personal statement, but it could be that one part of it comes out in a supplemental essay or the activities list. So this is kind of a good 7th exercise. I wouldn't necessarily start with this one, because all of this content in these other 6 exercises is going to prime them for that 7th one. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is like that islands of personality exercise. Hannah, am I missing anything, or is there anything that you'd add as I'm going through this, that in terms of brainstorming or tips that you would give?
Yeah, are the 21 details in there at all?
They're just like further down.
Yeah.
But go ahead, say more about the 21 details. Yeah.
I personally like the 21 details exercise because sometimes the students, they feel like oftentimes they don't think that they're that interesting. They're like, I'm just an average high school kid, but then you find out like they were in the National Spelling Bee or something, and like, but that's not something on their application because it's something from before. And so I feel like I've learned so much about the students in this list because it's their opportunity to show how they're a little bit more unique from their peers.
Yeah. And it's simply having the student list 21 random details about themselves. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm like you, Hannah, I've been surprised at how like the 17th detail was like, oh my gosh, tell me that story. Then boom, suddenly there's the thing. So I love this one. Below this, you'll also find another one, everything I want colleges to know about me list. This is like, just as it sounds, make a list of all the things that you want colleges to know about you. And that's a little bit different from the random details one. The random details one can sometimes lead to surprising essay topics, but this one sometimes is like, okay, yeah, we know we need to get that in the activities list. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if I had like 20 extra minutes with a student, I would say go 21 details and everything I want colleges to know about me. But you'd be surprised how just giving students a 21 details exercise, I think, can give them a thing, especially after, giving them these other exercises. So again, and I've said it a bunch of times, we'll follow up with links to these. But this, for us, and Hannah will talk a little bit about structure in a little bit, is a great way to start a workshop. If you're going to do a kickoff workshop with students, just starting with great brainstorming exercises to get their minds going, getting creative, having fun is an awesome way to kick things off. Mm-hmm. So that's the first big, resource that we wanted to share. But then when students generate all these ideas and they've got all these topics, and we like to tell students either in our workshops or whatever to come up with like 2 to 3 different ideas, because you know how it goes. Students will come with this one idea and they're like, I'm going to write this basketball essay and it's going to be amazing. And it's hard as a counselor to be like, especially if you only got a few minutes with them, to be like, what else you got? And so encouraging students early on to come up with 2 to 3 ideas that you can then synthesize and give them feedback on is a really great way to go. And so we started doing something called topic check. And I'm sure this is like a brand new idea to some of you, but Hannah, I want to let you share a little bit about what topic check is and how it's been useful with students. So I'll give it to you.
Yeah. So like Ethan was saying, sometimes you're like nearing a deadline, like early application deadline, or, right before the Common Apps are due. And then the students are emailing in the middle of the night. Can you just look at this real fast? And then, oh no, it's a sports essay or it's an essay about somebody else. And so now you're in the position of having to tell them they have to start over, or like, when there really isn't that much time. So even though it's another step, we do recommend something called topic checks. And this is something that we've incorporated in our own practices at CEG when we meet with students one-on-one, and then we send the essays to Ethan. So now he implements the topic checks and things too. And so so the topic check is not necessarily just telling them, oh, that's a common or less common topic. That's not actually the only point of that. The point is to look at, is this the right topic that's going to show the student as a whole? And so what we recommend is that you actually do the topic checks with their brainstorming in front of you as well, so that you kind of get a better outlook of the students. So when I taught Avid, I did have like these writing days, because I met with them every day. And so I would say, okay, students, like you're going to write on your essays, but I'm going to actually do topic checks with each of my students while everyone else is working. And so again, I would look at their brainstorming to be able to see, like, are you portraying yourself in the best way? Because a lot of times students think that they're writing to this imaginary person to, kind of like appeal to them or to impress them, right? Whether it's like their accomplishments or to write the saddest story possible, when that's not really what they're trying to do and what they're asking for. So something that we say is like the application with like the activities and like their grades is like the skeleton of the essay. So like if a doctor were to look at a bunch of x-rays, you don't really see a person. It's like a patient, like you don't see the human being. But the essay is what brings it to life. It brings it flesh. It like differentiates them with other students. And you have to imagine that the admissions readers, they're looking at so many so quickly, and it's just the ones that stand out that are the ones who are going to get more attention. And so we want to kind of frame it so that the students understand it's not a performative thing. It's more to kind of, they really want to know you. They want to see that flesh and that soul in your essay. And so I know, though, that you don't have the luxury of meeting with students back to back like I could do in a classroom setting. And so something that we recommend, and this is what we do with Ethan too, he doesn't like just meet with us back to back to go over these topic checks. What we do is we actually record what we call looms. So a loom is a short video. It's a free program. If you pay, I think you can record more than 5 minutes, but who wants to watch a video longer than 5 minutes, right? And I just want to tell you right now, I hate recording myself. I hate it so much. But you know what I hate more is when I leave comments on a student's doc and I don't know if they even read it, right? If they even saw the feedback, if they're incorporating any of it. But the looms, what's really great is that you can see if the student actually viewed it. And so it's really, really wonderful to be able to kind of actually be on the document with them through the loom. So it shares your screen. It can show the document, their essay, their brainstorming, and then you're helping them like connect the dots. And so the loom is such a great tool because it'll actually save you meetings. And so I know that something that we're used to is having to meet with students back to back or schedule, but ideally when you're doing topic checks, you can just meet with them through the videos. Am I missing anything about that?
That's great. I want to take folks into like, well, what do you do in a loom? Like, what do you do in a topic check? And this segues into kind of like the other resource, which is like, how do you give feedback? So let me give you all a sense of what we're talking about. So when it comes to, let's break this into two parts. Like, how do you give students feedback when it comes to a topic, and how do you give students feedback when it comes to like an actual draft if they've written one? So part one, so helping students pick a topic. So here's how to diagnose, in my mind, how to diagnose a topic. So students are either writing a montage, which is like not about challenges, or they're writing a narrative, which is basically a challenge-based essay. And I don't have a strong preference for either. I just know that many students have them through challenges. So we have this thing we call a montage. And a montage is basically a topic that, or some kind of theme that connects to lots of different sides of themselves. So for example, a montage might be, 5 things my grandmother taught me. And the theme is things my grandmother taught me, and it connects to different values or different sides of the student, right? And we found that stronger topics are often elastic, meaning stretchy enough to talk about lots of different sides of the student, and uncommon. In other words, it's not the basketball essay, right? A basketball could be a montage topic, which might be very elastic, meaning the student could connect basketball to lots of different sides of themselves. But if it's pretty common, it's going to be harder to stand out, right? So one of the things that we're synthesizing for is that when I'm doing a topic check is like, I'm looking for something ideally that's a little bit more uncommon and more elastic, or at least that's what's going to help them potentially write. It's going to be easier to stand out with that type of essay. Now, just to be clear, I've seen students write great essays, and very few, but on common sports and common instruments, so it's more like, it's more common, but it's like, maybe it's down here. So it's elastic, like maybe it's, the violin essay, but it's about improvising on the violin and, connecting it to, culture and connecting it to social justice. And then in that case, it's an elastic topic where the students connect to lots of different things. So that's the first thing that I'm kind of looking for. And then for a narrative essay topic, I'm looking for the kinds of challenges the student's talking about and what are the insights that the student has developed. And so the wow essays that are challenges based often have difficult, and I'm not saying go tell your students that they have to write about difficult challenges, but I'm saying that the essays that tend to be wow for me often are difficult challenges and have some kind of wow insight. And again, just to be super clear, I'm not saying that this is better. I'm just saying that this tends to be easier to write and tends to turn out. In some cases, it tends to be more of a standout essay. So that's just kind of like a framing way of thinking about this. And again, and you'll see example essays here. We'll share how to get access to this later, but this is, I've seen somebody write a great topic, an essay about food, but it had to be very elastic, and a great essay about losing a spelling bee, which is like not a difficult challenge, a compelling challenge. It's more of a meh challenge, but they wrote about it, very well. And there's more on how to do that there. Whoops, I don't know why that scrolled all the way down. In terms of, let me see where I scroll down. Here we go. In terms of, what to do when students have problems, if they've got a great topic, then great. There's a part of this choose your own adventure tool, which again, we'll share after, that will help students begin to outline their essay. So just to give you a sense of that, once students have brainstormed, there's a way to write each of these different types of essays, and I'm a big believer in creating outlines and multiple outlines of different topics. And then, for when it comes to a narrative, there's an exercise in here called the feelings and needs exercise, which will help students basically outline their essay. So if they've got a great topic, then it's basically, we're not going to talk about outlining today because that would just be too much to cram in, to go outline your idea, outline your topic. But if it's not so great, then I would actually send them back to brainstorming more ideas. And some of those exercises that we mentioned earlier, the 21 details or the everything I want colleges to know about me, are a great additional supplemental exercises to help students start to generate more ideas. If students have faced challenges, like I mentioned, that feelings and needs exercise, which Hannah, would you mind just like in the chat, just throwing in the feelings and needs exercise like we have on from our website so that folks have that? That's another great one for students who have faced challenges. But again, I don't want students who haven't to feel like they have to write about challenges. So that's why I tend to focus on montage first and then do narrative after that. Because I feel like if they don't have a great topic, they just need to go back and do some more brainstorming. Okay. So what you might do, for example, in a topic check is say, for example, let me just share my screen for a second. You might say to a student, if it's a topic check, once you kind of look at the students' brainstorming exercises and you see the different islands of their personality and you see their topic, and let's say their topic is something like songwriting, and you go, let's say the student's name is Jasmine. Jasmine, and you look at everything else that they're working on. Usually, oftentimes, I'll have students also send in an activities list so I can see what their activities are. And you might have your own brag sheet for that. And say, here's my loom. Jasmine, I think this songwriting topic is going to be a really cool personal statement topic. I can see how it can connect to some of these different things that you mentioned, like your family and some of the extracurriculars you've been doing. I could also see it, and here's where you can kind of give some advice. I could also see it maybe connecting to some of this volunteer work that you've been doing, because I noticed you've been volunteering teaching music, and I wonder if songwriting could connect to that in some way. I don't know, just a thought for you. And then that's kind of the vibe of these topic check videos that we do, these looms. So last year was like, we joked, it was like the year of 1,000 looms for me, where I was just recording a bunch of these like, short 1 to 5 minute videos for students talking through the overall, the application with students. And also a purpose of that loom is for them to just have that personal connection with me so that they could see like, oh, cool. Here's my Ethan, my counselor, who's giving me some thoughts on this, and then boom, then they're off and they can start their work. So anyway, highly recommend looms, but it might be that students, and I'm going to cover this, do the 5-minute version of this, that students have already sent you a draft, and looms are also a great way to help students, to give them some feedback on a draft. Mm-hmm. So one of the ways that we conceptualize the writing process is first thinking about content, then structure, then details. And we say this because on a first draft, I think it's tempting to sometimes touch the grammar, to like start thinking about word choice and stuff like that, or proofreading. And if we imagine that we're first talking about content and then we're talking about structure, all that grammar, that's those details, that's stuff that's going to get cleaned up later and figured out later. Really, we got to ask some big picture questions, like, is this the quote unquote right, meaning most elastic, or best story for the student um, to be telling? And how do you diagnose it? Like, how do you know if it's a great topic? Sorry, it keeps jumping down. When it comes to a narrative topic, the questions, here are 4 questions for each of these that I encourage students to ask of their counselor, or of anybody who's helping them through this process. Is, if they're writing a challenges-based essay, first, is it clear what the challenges are? Second, is it clear what the impacts of those challenges were? Sometimes you see students writing about a challenge, but they don't really talk about what it meant to them, so you don't really have that full context. So that's an important second piece that I think students miss out on. Is it clear what the student did to overcome their challenges? Sometimes the whole essay is all about the challenge itself, but really we don't get a sense of what they did about it. And then finally, what they learned through the experiences. What are those insights that they developed? And those 4 questions, if a student just like free wrote on those things, or bullet pointed the concrete steps that they took, I mean, they're going to have a ton to say, right? And you can also help diagnose, because usually when I'm reading a challenges-based essay, if the essay needs to be improved, it's probably in one of these 4 areas. Like, actually, I'm not clear on the challenges, or actually, I'm not clear on the effects of the challenges, or what they did about it, or what they learned, or the student is sharing too much in one section and not enough in the others, right? So there's not like a right way to do it, like a perfect way to do it, but generally, if they share, a third on the challenges and what they did about it, a third on a third on the challenges and how they impacted them, a third on what they did to overcome the challenge, and a third on what they learned through the experiences, that's a pretty good, breakdown. When it comes to students who are not writing about challenges, 4 questions for that. One is it clear what the topic is? Because sometimes, you read an essay and you're like, I don't even know what this essay is about. So can you clarify, or help the student clarify, what the topic or thematic thread is? Second, specific examples for each paragraph. Oftentimes students are kind of abstract. You'll see this on the UC personal insight questions, where they talk about a quality like, I don't know, perseverance, or, adaptability, but I don't see those specific examples yet. So is it clear that the specific examples connect back to whatever the central idea is? And then the third is, what are the values that you're showing through this? That's the part where the student, like, where the admission officer is getting to really know the student. Well, you've got this cool example, but like, what does it tell me about the kind of student that you're going to be on campus? So making sure that those values are connected to the examples. And then finally, what are those insight or so what moments? And I know this sounds kind of general. There's, like, inside this tool, there's specific advice on, for example, like how to bring more insight into an essay. So we're not just so you know that this is like, this is all in here. So it's not like, well, what are these things? And I would love to get into it. We just don't have time today. But big picture, if you think about these 4 questions for the challenges-based essay and these 4 questions for the montage essay, it's a pretty good way of doing a scan and setting you up for feedback with the student. So if I were recording let's say an essay, and I'm gonna do like sort of the 1-minute version here, but say I'm recording a short video, or I'm giving feedback to a student who sent me an essay. These are the questions that are going through my brain. 1, is this a challenges-based essay or not? If it is a challenges-based essay, is it clear what the challenges are, what the impacts were, what they did to overcome the challenges, and is it clear what they learned through the experiences? And I'm basically, if one of those is not clear, I'm zooming in and asking the student to work on that. Yeah. If it's a montage, not challenges-based essay, I'm asking these 4 questions. And so if, X student has sent me an essay, and I'm like, I think it's about wanting to be a lawyer, but I also think that maybe it's an essay about like their love of music. Then I go, is your essay about, for example, for the topic, about music, about being a lawyer, or is it about somehow how they connect? And your love of music has somehow in a roundabout way led you to want to become a lawyer. And that could be an interesting kind of topic, but that needs to be clarified at the start of the essay, probably. And then for each one of those, and so what I'll do is, and that's going to kind of, everything is going to kind of flow from that. But what you'll notice is that a lot of time here, this is kind of content focused, right? Topic or thematic thread, that's going to kind of shape the content. Specific examples, that's going to be content related. The value is going to relate to the content, and then the insights, that's a little bit more into the details. So a lot of these questions, especially early on, are going to be content focused. I'm going to pause for a second. Hannah, what are my thoughts to add to this, or what am I missing about the topic check, or anything that you want to add here?
I think the insight part is so important. You know, when people ask like, what makes a really like standout essay, it is that insight part, you know, because it's trying to show like, are you kind of mentally in a place where you're going to fit in with the population of students at our school. And I think that's the part students struggle with the most. And so what I tell them is it's okay, especially for like the narrative one, because you're still probably just processing it. And that's why the personal statement process is a process, because they're still actually, you know, kind of analyzing everything that's happened in their life up until that point. So that part I feel like is the part that's that makes students stand out too.
Yeah. Let's talk a little about peer review, Hannah. Sometimes it's hard, obviously, and I know that some counselors listening to me like, that would be great to record an individual video for all of my kids and hold them like this, but it's just impossible for lots of counselors. So will you talk a little bit about how you set up peer review systems and how you did that in Avid?
Yeah, for sure. So at my school, students were asked often to come to the library during lunch or after school for personal statement help from the counselors. So all the counselors would be there, the students would sit at the computers, and then the counselors would float from one person to the next. If they even got to the next person, oftentimes they would end up, you know, because our lunch was only like 30 minutes. And so sometimes, you know, students really need a lot of help. So they didn't really get to, you know, I guess, interact with that many people. And so in my case, when I taught Avid, it would be like, you know, 20 to 30 students, depending on the year. So how am I supposed to help all of them and try to give them personal feedback, you know, at once, you know, during this, I guess, month or so that we're going to spend focusing on it. And so what I did was I tried first to create mini versions of myself as a, you know, like modeling like how I would give them feedback. And so even if you are a counselor and you don't have the luxury of having this kind of time with students, I think it would be amazing for you to actually create this like safe space for peer review. I know that it's a very, very scary thing, because especially in this generation where students are used to literally filtering everything from their pictures to whatever it is, they feel like they have to be perfect. And so showing their mistakes or showing any kind of flaws is terrifying. And so I try to let them know that the only way, it's the whole growth mindset thing, right? The only way to grow or to get better is if you make mistakes, you know? And so what I would have them do is I would first, before we break them out into smaller groups, I would take a brave volunteer, and then I would openly go over their draft or outline with them openly, so that the students can see, oh, this is the way she's thinking and processing it. So you want them to be thinking like you, right? So that they can give feedback to their peers. And so you have to do it enough so that you can see like, oh, they are thinking like me now, you know? And so again, like Ethan said, it's more big content. Like students often will try to attack the grammar because that's the easiest thing to give feedback on. So you're trying to get them to think bigger and to give them the constructive feedback. And so, you know, there's a whole like compliment sandwich. So I always try, at least very quickly, to give them something positive, then something constructive, and then end with something positive, because they are so sensitive. It's such a sensitive topic. It's about themselves. So you want students to feel seen and heard. And so it is very important to create a safe environment. So whether it is like in a college career center or a library, whatever it might be, to let them know that this is a safe space and to let them know what the boundaries are, so that, you know, it's like letting students know that you can't share some of this stuff out, you know, in the quad and stuff like that. So if you're able to establish that, especially with consistency, if certain students can come more frequently, or you could even put them in groups with their friends if they want that to have that feeling of safety, that is possible too. So what I would do is after they've seen me model and they know like what kind of feedback I'm looking for, I would put them into random groups of 4 to 5, depending on the size of the group. And then they would take turns doing basically this read around, where they would read their essay out loud, and then the students would note the feedback. And then at the end, after it's read, they would give each other that feedback. But that entire time, I'm going from group to group to make sure that the students are giving the right kind of feedback, or like, and they're seeing me model this more and more too. So I did this like a bunch of times, to the point where students were like, wow, that first draft that I read a couple of days ago is totally different. So it's really amazing to be able to see that kind of evolution of their essay, and for students to give that kind of feedback to each other. You would be amazed, just like the insight the students get, because by giving each other that feedback, it makes their own so much better as well. And so again, usually the problem is that they're too nice to each other, but you know, they'll get to it, because I'll tell them, if you have broccoli in your teeth, don't you want your friends to tell you, you know, like, don't be the person that doesn't tell them, you know. So anyway, so I always have them in circles, so it's a little bit more isolated, and then and feel a little bit more safe. So that's kind of like the quick version of it, but yeah.
I love it. Yeah, that's something that, and it takes like bravery on your part, right? To like put students in this. But so so I want to encourage, if you do decide to do this, is to go slow and to be really specific with what you're asking students to look for. Because and just to flash back, that the thing that I shared, those 4 questions that you can ask of the challenges, or 4 questions of the montage, if you ask the students to look specifically for those 4 things, it provides kind of a rubric, which limits the scope a little bit of what students are doing. And so if you're asking students to just answer for their friend, are the challenges clear? Are the effects of the challenges clear? Then it kind of takes it out of the, well, what are we doing in this thing? And so if you can just get really specific when you're setting students up with what they're looking for, then I think it can help create that sense of psychological safety that's so important for this work.
Definitely. And certain days could focus on like the intro. We're going to just look at intro today, or just the conclusion. And something that I did to create that safe space too, is I actually did the brainstorming with them. And I would show my vulnerability in answering some of the questions, so they felt a little bit safer.
Yeah. Today we don't have time to get into like the different structures. We're going to share more about that and soon. We've got a couple PDs coming up. But yeah, there are different ways to structure this. Like what Hannah's talking about is good for like, if you do like an intensive, like multi-day thing where they are getting to know each other and they're getting to know you a little bit better. George is asking on the Q&A, and please, more questions if you've got them. Just we'll get to them in about 5 minutes. George is asking, how do you help students feel too shy to share their essays in this way? You know, Hannah's point about, go, please.
I was definitely that student. I was such a wallflower. Like, some of my colleagues, when I went back to teach there, they didn't know who I was. That's how quiet I was at school. And so, because I'm so much of an introvert, that like, I just really need to process internally first before I say anything out loud, those students will still benefit from being part of the group, so that they can still give feedback, because they gain so much, just like, I guess, knowledge or experience just from that process. So even if they don't publicly share, that's okay. Eventually though, they will, because they're actually yearning to share their stories. They want to be seen and heard. So eventually they will, but they may not be like the most outspoken ones in the beginning.
Yeah. And also the other thing I want to say is like, make it optional, make it totally optional, and tell students what else do sometimes in a workshop is like, if we've got, let's say 20 minutes to share, I'll say, you're going to pair up with somebody. Maybe we've just done like the feelings and needs exercise. And I'll say, you know, you've got 2 options. One is to like spend 10 minutes each sharing this and giving each other feedback on these specific questions. The other way you can do it is maybe just one person wants to share. And then you just use the whole 20 minutes for that one person, because the time will go fast.
Yeah.
But what I tell students is like, don't do nothing. Like, don't just chat. Like, have an intention, you know, have a clear intention that you're setting. And so maybe it's that the students decide, and maybe this is a third option you give them. It's like, if you feel like in your partner, your pair, you want to just like work because you both have things that you want to just work on, then you can jump into writing right now. But set an intention and then execute whatever that intention is. So those are some ways. It really making it optional, because there is going to be the social pressure, and really letting them know that it's totally okay if they don't want to share, if it feels too personal. Or if they have multiple ideas, they don't have to necessarily share about the big challenges one. They could kind of talk about this other one. So making sure that they know that it's truly optional. Okay, we're gonna get to Q&A in just a minute. I want to share just a couple things that are coming up, ways to collaborate with us, partner with us if you're interested. We have this thing called CEG Live, which is, it was formerly known as CEG for Schools. It's a way that we more, virtual workshops that we're offering coming up. And essentially it's a combination of, summer boot camps that we do with students that we offer, PD workshops for counselors, and then this choose your own adventure tool that we've shown a couple times here that's got basically a walkthrough of like pretty much all the things. And the way it works, I'll just scroll down to these dates. We have 3 different dates that we're doing these boot camps. And these are basically boot camps where students will come on to YouTube, and through the process of over the course of 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they'll basically have a chance to brainstorm, outline, and then structure their personal statements and then send them to you for ideas. So it's kind of like really just to get them started, and to also implant in their brains like what goes into a great essay and how do they write it. And so hopefully they're doing just a lot of work on their own, and it's saving you some time in that regard. And then, June 13th, anyway, you see them here. These are the dates. And then we've also got, like I mentioned, this tool that basically walks students through everything from like when it comes to revising, how do you figure out how to start your essay? We've got a piece on that. We've got, questions to ask when they're wanting to get feedback. And so inside here, it's like, hey, email your counselor with these specific questions. 10 ways to get more insight into your essay. How do you write a great transition sentence? And then it even covers things like, how do you know if your essay is doing its job? And how do you end your personal statement? And tips on, how to polish your essay and grammar. So this is the Choose Your Own Adventure tool, just to be really clear, is the curriculum for this the boot camp that we do. And then we've also got these sort of the boot camps that we're doing on the supplemental essays. So how do you save time in the process by reusing your topics for multiple supplements? The activities list, additional info, and that YS essay, helping students think about those essays. So it's basically resources. And each of these are like, 90-minute sessions, and students can choose between 2 different times where they're coming on in a group setting, getting their questions answered. So it's kind of like if you imagine having Ethan come into your school and do a workshop, but we're doing it virtually, and I'm doing it for more students than just yours. So, but we find that oftentimes students get their questions answered, but it's not so huge that we can't do that. And then we've got a specific one that we do on the UC personal insight questions for those of you who have students working on those. And what else? Oh, and then we've got PDs. So we've got 3 PDs coming up. One is they're coming up in like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and 10 weeks. How to help students brainstorm and choose a personal statement topic. So we're going to kind of do more of a deep dive on the stuff that we started to talk about today. How to create a great outline, and then how to give great feedback. So we get more specific into that. And then people are wondering, cool, Ethan, how much does this cost? We've got 3 options. The first one is like for folks who have a budget, great, it's $497. For folks who have some budget, $197. But if you have no budget for this, it's free, y'all. And you're like, wait, what's the catch? And there's no catch. You just sign up and register. And so we want to make it really easy and accessible for folks. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is I've got this course. If you're interested in up-leveling your own personal statement game in terms of how you work with students, starting in 2 weeks, you've got this counselor training program coming up. And it's pretty much it's my brain. And you dig around in my brain and find out all the things that I know and love. And Hannah's going to be co-leading parts of it with me. We've got for students to work with students one-on-one, which is, there's a link here. And then there's a large group session, which would be if you've got a medium to large caseload. So we're going to get more specifically into what are some different structures that you can use and how do you map out like an individual workshop. So it's like basically by the end of the 4 weeks, and it's coming up in March, you should have like your whole workshop plan and how you're going to work with students mapped out. And then you'll have all the resources for it. Another tiny piece that we're adding this year is counselors, inviting counselors who are interested to write their own personal statement. If some of you are like, I don't have time for that. So great, don't have to, but it's another optional add-on. So anyway, enough commercials. We'll follow up with more info on that. But I wanted to make a little time for y'all to just ask questions, and let's get into some more things. Yes. Oh, I got your question, Brooke. Can students still do CEG live and not be linked to us for review? Yeah. So there are 3 options, and it's mapped out inside. There's a whole section inside the tool that basically, here, if you look inside the tool, there's this little part. Let me expand my screen. There's a section here for counselors. And so you can use this in 3 different ways. You can have students do a CEG workshop or the boot camp, and then they can work through the tool on their own. And it's set up that way. And one of the things I tell students on CEG Live is like, if your counselors ask you to email them, great. If not, great. this is also set up in a way for you to lead students through your own brainstorming workshop. So here, for example, inside, you'll see an outline for how to structure your own workshop. And you'll also see in here a cool downloadable PowerPoint template that Hannah created, because she is so much better than I am. But it's how to brainstorm and structure personal statements. So it's got like templates. So depending on how you want to do it, Brooke, if you want to have them just like, great, go to the college essay guy workshop and then work on it on your own, that totally works, especially if you've got a huge caseload. You know, they're not going to expect you to, and I'm not going to make them expect you to like give you feedback. The other options that I give them on the course is I'm like, you know, it's great to have somebody give you feedback if you've got a counselor, a mentor, a friend, or students can also have the option of pairing up with somebody on the course. You know, we give them the option to like pair up with another student. We've got a Discord group where students can get a writing partner and just get, and we're trying to do the thing that Hannah said, which is like install kind of like a little counselor in their brain and give them some things to look for, or to give each other feedback on, so that they can do that work together. You're so welcome, Elizabeth. I appreciate the love. Jamie says, I've used CEG so much over the years, but frequently it feels geared towards high achieving students. I'd love to have some tools for B or C students who just don't quite hit the mark of students applying to super selective. Totally. I hear you, Jamie. So part of what we're working on this year is sharing some more essay examples, because part of that, I've gotten that feedback. We've gotten that feedback before. Part of it is like those essay examples can be really intimidating. So one of the things we're going to be doing is sharing out more example essays. It's been hard to like figure out how do we ask for those essays from students that like did the job, but that weren't sort of like, oh my gosh, this is like a mind-blowing essay. I'll never be able to get to this point. And so we're interested in doing that. What we found though is some of the simple exercises seem to work pretty well, but I would love to hear from you, specifically Jamie, of like, oh, and by the way, we're giving away free workshops in just a minute. I should share that link. I totally almost forgot about that. I said I was going to do it, and hold on one second. So we're giving away 3 free workshops, and
Do you want me
I want to just, oh, that would be so awesome. Oh, here it is. I found it.
so,
oh, you got it? Okay, sweet. So we're giving away 3 free workshops. So if you are interested in having a free workshop, again, there's no catch. And you're not committing to doing the workshop. It's just like, I'm interested in the free workshops. This is not like a list building thing where we're going to like send College Board your contract. It's just like, we're just curious, like who's interested in a free workshop? And we're going to just pick 3 people, three schools to get free workshops. But I would be interested, Brooke, specifically of like, as you've used those, like what are the moments when students feel like, I can't do this? I think the moment is when they look at the intimidating sample essay. But I would also be interested in, Brooke, if you feel like the exercises are too difficult, because the assumption that I'm holding is that these exercises will be understandable to the high flyer students and the B or C students, but that the difference is the kind of content that they generate through those. In other words, those high flyer students are going to generate from the 21 details like 35 details, whereas some of the other students are going to have a tougher time with like that particular exercise. And so part of also the way that we've shifted over the last few years is like offering a wider variety of exercises. So if students don't vibe with the essence objects, they've got some others. So Cynthia is asking, we've got a small budget, free training would be so helpful. How can we get a coupon going? You don't even need a coupon code, Cynthia. Just go and click the button. So just, go to the CEG Live page and you can like sign up right there. How do we register our rising seniors for the CEG Live opportunities? Just click that button on the CEG Live link. Ashley, if you wouldn't mind just sharing that once more. And you just, actually, let me just show y'all like, literally how to do it. So real quick. Here we go. So you just jump in here, and here it says register. So just pick whichever, amount makes sense for you. And then, you click this button, register, and then you fill in your information, and then we'll follow up with you on how to get your students signed up. So that's it. Let's see. I have 700 students. Yeah, totally get it, Brooke. You don't have to do that. Are there any Saturday dates for the live essay sessions? For some of the smaller boot camps, there are, Michael, but we're doing it during the year, and we're trying to offer them sort of in evening times as well, afternoon evening times for those. But there are other things that we're offering on Saturdays that are not related to CEG Live. Karen's asking, can you share of an example? Yeah, so the Loom example, if you go inside the thing that we shared, I'll show you where to find it inside the Choose Your Own Adventure tool. And yeah, you need to be inside the Choose Your Own Adventure tool for this. But if you go inside here, you'll see, if you go to the counselors page, anyway, this basically maps out how to give, how to do all the things pretty much. But if you go here to the quick guide to giving feedback using the tool, you know, here's basically how to help students. This is the thing that I was showing earlier about how to help students, how to give students feedback. And then what you'll find here as you click into this is an example of me giving feedback. This is the students' actual work that they did, like what they generated on one of my online courses. And then you'll see in here the 3-minute Loom video I sent her. So just to show you where that is, once you log into the tool, you basically go to the counselors page and you go to a quick guide to giving feedback using the tool. And that's where you'll find the link to this. And you'll find this Loom example. So I know that involves some clicks, but that's the place to find it. What other questions? It says August 15th to August 10th, does it? We'll fix that. Sorry. Ashley, would you mind fixing that? I appreciate it. What else? Can you send the link for the PowerPoint, please? So that's going to be inside. Like, I'd rather share that, Amy, inside the context of like how all the things work. So the place to find that is on that same counselor's link inside the Choose Your Own Adventure tool. So once if you sign up for CEG Live, and again, there's no financial barrier you just have to like sign up for it. You'll find that inside the tool, and it's under that counselor's link. So let me just show you where to find that once more. You go inside here, you go to the counselor's link, you click that, and then you'll see here the CEG's one-page guide to essay workshops. And then right here is where you'll see the downloadable PowerPoint template. And so yeah, for those of you who are taking the course, I'm going to be talking through the specifics of how to do that. And Hannah and I are both going to be talking about it because Hannah spent a lot of time and she's going to be talking about Pear Deck. We didn't even talk about Pear Deck today, but Pear Deck is a really cool platform that Hannah has been using with students over the last couple of years, and it gets 100% engagement from students on things. I did a lot of talking. I feel self-conscious. I'm sorry. Are there any questions that we missed? Oh, there was a question for you, Hannah, from early on from Kirk that was about
the overall part.
Oh yeah, the overall one. Yeah, will you answer that? We're going to spend a few more minutes. I mean, if you all need to go, please feel free to go. But we're going to spend a few more minutes on Q&A because we have more questions. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like what I meant about, you know, like showing the student as a whole is like, it makes me think about this one student that I had this year where we were working with a CBO and I only had 2 meetings with him that we had scheduled. And so I had to get to know him very, very quickly and give him feedback very fast. So when I got his essay, it was, you know, it was an okay essay. It was a great montage essay. And it's like a Mortal Kombat, poker, and, you know, different like games I've never heard of. So it was like a game montage essay. Overall, it showed great writing. It showed like the different ways that these games will make him a great economist. So it did all the CEG things you're supposed to do. But then like every time we would meet, or the 2 times we met, he was meeting at his dorm. So I was like, where are you? He's like, oh, I'm in this like, you know, private boarding school in Oregon. I'm like, oh, okay. But he's in this foundation where the students are not, you know, they're like first gen low income students. And so I was like, oh, you know, did you grow up in Oregon? He's like, oh no, I grew up like in a crop circle in Washington. It's like, oh my goodness, right? And so and his principal singled him out because he was like the highest achieving student at his school, saying, do you want this opportunity to go to this school in Oregon for like a better education, basically? And he was like, yeah. And so it's like, oh my goodness, that would have been nowhere in his application, you know? And so we were talking about, so he basically changed it so that it became a kind of like a poker essay, but it talked about how he went all in and took the risk in his life, you know? So it became almost like a blending of the narrative and the montage to kind of give a better picture of the context, because he was doing great in school and all this stuff, but he, you know, had to go through so many different things to get to where he's at. And I just felt like, you know, that image of him being at the school from this place of out of nowhere was going to give a more complete picture of who he is as a person. I hope.
Yeah, I love that. Sometimes it's finding like the thread of the idea that will allow them to talk about themselves in a more elastic way and be like, boom, here's the as a whole who I am. And it's impossible to do as a whole because we're like doing 650 words. So
Yeah.
let's do one more question because I realize that this is going to be a recording. It's going to look like it's super long if we don't end soon. For international students, their language proficiency is variable. True. How do you set a workshop for them taking into consideration these differences? We have a mini course coming up for this. How do you work with them and avoid help too much of the writing? Okay, Christina, there is it's in the works. It's in the kitchen. We're cooking it up. Renee, who's coaches Caputo, who's worked at the Duke Writing Center for years and worked with ELL students for 20 years, is putting together a mini course on this. So we're going to do a whole 2-hour session on working with students with English language learning students. And so more to come on that. Stay tuned to your emails. So anyway, let's end it because because again, I'm like sensitive to like when people look at the recording and go like, oh my gosh, this is super long. So thank you, Hannah. I appreciate you. And if those of you who have friends who you want to invite, we're going to do this again in 5 hours. So feel free to send them the link. Let them know that we're going to share it. The afternoon session is going to be very similar to this one. But if you want to come back and you got other questions that didn't get answered, please join us. All right. Much love. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.